Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about the must-watch episodes of Season 10. Season 10 had a lot of stuff going on. What were the big episodes that we just can't stand to miss? But before we get into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Lola.
My name is Lola Lariscy, and I've been a fan of Supernatural since 2005 when I was 5 years old.
Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I've been a fan of Supernatural since that very first episode, all the way until the last episode made me cry.
Anna?
Wow. Yeah. I am Anna Kensing. I too am a writer. I write queer romance, mostly but not exclusively sometimes with tentacles. And I've been a fan of Supernatural since the beginning, since the first season. I've dabbled a little bit in fanfic and I kept watching all the way through the end. And yeah, thanks for reminding me about the last episode that made me cry.
Carole?
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 3. Started writing fanfic under the name Firesign 10 in 2012. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Spotify podcasts So Get This, the lore of Supernatural fanfic. And as Ellis Colton, I am an MM romance writer.
Very good. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa. I have been a fan since 2005 when the pilot aired, and Kitty has been a fan since 2020.
Very good. And I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all the modern day ones are ones Sam and Dean could walk into and feel right at home. I fell in love with the show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months so that I could start live tweeting season 12, and I've been an obsessed fan ever since. So season 10 had a lot going on. You know, we ended up with a real cliffhanger at the end of season 9, even by Supernatural standards. And so let's talk about our very favorite episodes. Lola, kick us off. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, I'm going to start with Black. I think that's episode 1. But first of all, I just love the bad karaoke and the Crowley drinks frou-frou drinks because I love frou-frou drinks. I'm drinking a pina colada right now. And watching Dean lip sync to I'm Too Sexy, that needs to be like the backdrop for my whole life. If I ever die and there's a funeral, you can play that in the backdrop. It's okay. I think it would be cool. And we know Dean is slipping. He's becoming more and more evil. But you see a little bit of the old Dean who, sticks up for women. He still has, respect for women, because when the waitress's ex-boyfriend starts hounding her, he steps in and he like beats up the ex-boyfriend, and it's like, oh, how sweet. But yeah, that didn't last long because later on in the episode, Dean is in bed with the woman and he uses the word skank, and not cool at all. We get a lot of great moments with Crowley. Crowley talking about Dean saying, he's my best friend, my partner in crime. They'll write songs about us, graphic novels. And I just love it. Crowley had such great lines this one. So I think it's a good episode because it's funny and you get to see just how much Dean is slipping.
Okay. Anna?
Yeah, I was going to start off with Black as well because I completely agree with you. It sets up the whole season. It sets up Dean as a demon. It sets up the need for Dean to kill in the Marco Kane. It sets up this, well, it continues with this bromance with Crowley. It's just a delightful episode. So since you've already done that, like the next episode, honestly, Reichenbach is also really great. So, and this again, we think that Dean is standing up for the stripper or for the women, except that, like he's giving trouble to strippers in a stripper bar, which isn't really like him. And so, yeah, like we're seeing Dean slipping. He's like, he respects strippers. He has no problem with their occupation. He doesn't cause trouble to them, except in this episode where he's like taunting her and he's like teasing her with the money, and then he gets tossed out with the bartender. But still, we get more and of Dean and Crowley's heart to heart. And then we get the storyline of Cole, who is deeply tedious, except that we get some really delightful scenes where Dean is just going to just like beat the crap out of this guy who's built his entire life around going after the man who killed his father. And so there's a lot of witty dialogue and banter in this episode, and Dean's joy in watching Cole's efforts and his frustrations, and the poor dude who has no idea what he's dealing with. Dean's not even trying. Dean doesn't kill Cole, which is the absolute worst thing that he could have done to him, which Dean points out to Sam when Sam comes and picks him up and douses him with holy water and puts him in the back of the Impala and says, "That ain't mercy. And what I'm going to do to you, Sam, that ain't going to be mercy either."
Well, and Cole was kind of a low rent Dean Winchester because, Sam and Dean chased after a demon who killed their mother. Cole modeled his whole life after chasing a demon who killed his father, although Dean wasn't a demon at the time he killed him. And now he confronts a demon, and Cole just couldn't measure up. Although I really thought he should have gotten it for what he did for Sammy. He got off way too easy.
He got off way too easy, but on the other hand, like seriously, like the poor bastard, like he spends his whole life training for this, and Dean kicks his ass in like 2 seconds and just without even trying, and it's just humiliating and terrible. But then Dean's like leaning on the piano with a whiskey glass, and he's like, playing little bits, and Sam's giving him his puppy dog eyes, and it's just sort of like simultaneously all of the things that make up Dean, but also all of the things that like make up Dean that are twisted to demonstrate to us that he's not really Dean anymore. He's not the Dean with a soul. He's the demon Dean because he's been corrupted by the mark of Cain.
Elektra?
Hibbing 911, where we return to Hibbing and Sheriff Jody meets Sheriff Donna, who she does not want to meet happy Donna, but they do eventually bond. And in the middle of all of it, vampires, and they call in Sam and Dean, who help them out. And it turns out that Donna's really got a lot of guts, and it starts Donna on the trail to being a hunter, which she's remarkably good at. And Donna is another one of my favorite characters, if nothing else, because she has a type, and it's, sheriff's named Doug.
Losers.
Which is just too silly. And I was also going to start with blacks. So apparently we are in sync tonight. And there are enough of us, so, we can always like get together and sing.
That's true. Well, there was a musical episode.
Or not.
Or not. Well, and with Hibbing, I've said before, I'd love to have seen Sheriff Kathleen from the Benders show up at that sheriff's conference because it happened in Hibbing. But just to see the boys walk in and all the sheriffs have met them under other names with different badges and go, they're Fish and Wildlife. No, they're U.S. Marshals. No, they're,
FBI.
And you brought up elsewhere, with which the Benders comes into, that sometimes the worst monsters are people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In the end.
Mm-hmm. Melissa? You're muted.
Deeply Tedious is our new band name since we're going to sing later. Because I just think that's hilarious. I also had Black as my place to start. So I will go to the absolute opposite end and start with Brother's Keeper. Because we have some really key moments in this. Like Dean kills Death, which sets up all kinds of dominoes for later seasons. Because if Dean didn't kill Death, we would never have Billy as Death and all Billy's shenanigans as Death. So that's one piece reason. And we release the darkness. And that sets up next season's big bad. So I think you can't have this season without Brother's Keeper.
Well, and Dean kills Death because he reneges on the plan, because he was going to let Death take him, and then he was like he couldn't be without Sam, and so he was going to kill Sam, but then he didn't kill Sam because he can't kill Sam, not ever.
Right.
And so he kills Death instead of killing Sam, and
Yeah.
all of the wackiness ensues.
Mhm.
And
And
unfortunately, we lost Death, who was like a great character.
I know.
Yeah. But we did find out that Dean can cook queso and other Mexican dishes.
Yes.
So this is something good to know.
Well, and also we learned how to kill Death, which is also important for later.
Mhm.
Right. And we
Very
learned
true.
what the Mark of Cain does, like what it exists for, why it's a thing. So we learned that too.
And that it is the first curse, which is critically important too.
Yes.
All sorts of critical information in
And
there.
why the Impala should always have tire chains,
Yes.
so that you don't get stuck in the mud when the darkness is bearing down on you.
Right.
One good set of tire chains
One
and they
for
would have
Gail.
been out of there. Carol.
I like that Dean made taquitos as part of his spread. So I'll go back to the beginning. We already had episodes 1 and 2, so I'm going to do episode 3, Soul Survivor. The critical plot part is, of course, Dean is demonized. But we get to see, before that happens, we at least get some great scenes of him bound in the chair and roaring, and he's just terrific. And then for me, the best part is the little, they're hunting each other through the hallways of the bunker. It's just so well done. And Jensen just has this great, casually lethal air about him that's wonderful. And Sam is like dealing with the fact that he's got to protect himself and not get killed by this demon Dean. And yet it's his brother and he loves him and he wants to save them. So there's a lot of just tension, because who's going to get who first, but also with all of these emotions that are just roiling everywhere through this whole hallway thing. And it finally culminates in this beautiful shot. This was an episode directed by Jensen, and he has a really crisp directing style. And this episode definitely falls in that category. And so this whole bunker hunt culminates in this fabulous shot where Sam and Dean are face to face. Sam's got a big old hunting knife to Dean's throat, and Dean looks at him and says, "Do it." And not only does he say, "Do it," he actually then rests his head onto the knife. And it is, like Anna's saying, it's hot AF. But just the whole, the tension and the dynamic and all of that is just so good, so crisp and clean, and so kudos to both Jensen's performance and his directing, and just what the both boys brought to that. And then, it finally ends that, of course, he is cured and he becomes human Dean, and he still has the mark, but he is no longer a demon. His eyes aren't dark anymore. And there's this really kind of sad, wistful little note at the end where, I think Castiel is telling Sam, we still got to do something. And Sam's like, just got my brother back, gonna give him a bag of cholesterol, then I'm gonna sit down and get drunk, and we'll deal with everything tomorrow.
Right?
And the world weariness that he conveys through this, and this whole like, dude, I just slaughtered a dragon. The next dragon can wait. Is really, it conveys so much. So both plot wise, it moves things along really importantly, but again, just the performances are really, really lovely in this episode.
Well, and also the vulnerability when Cass comes to talk to Dean and Dean says, did you see Sam? Does he want a divorce? And the vulnerability in his face after having been so lethal as the demon,
Yeah.
kind of realizing what all he's said and done and wondering if this is going to be what Sam finally leaves him over for good. This is when Sammy's really going to walk out. Sam's done his duty and now he's gone.
Yeah.
And that shift from soulless killer to so vulnerable,
Yeah.
it's Jensen.
Did I
It's just plain beauty.
push the most important person in my life too far, even though I wasn't really doing it, but nonetheless, am I going to
Yeah.
suffer that pain?
But also recall that at the beginning of this episode, when Dean is still a demon and he's like, strapped in the chair and Sam is trying to cure him with the injections of the human blood and Dean is taunting him, Dean is reminding Sam that he has done some pretty horrible things for his brother, right? He tricked or persuaded or manipulated Lester Morris to summoning a Crossroads demon in the hopes of trapping the Crossroads demon. And then Lester Morris sells his soul to the Crossroads demon. And then Dean kills Lester because the deal was that he was going to kill Lester's cheating wife. But, Dean, the demon, is like, well, I'm just going to kill this loser asshole here. But like, Sam's done a lot of really bad things. He makes a man go enter into a deal with the Crossroads demon and loses his soul. He then tortures that Crossroads demon in order to get her to give him information, which she doesn't have, and so she can't give. He's done a lot too. And so yeah, in that moment when Dean says, how Sam, does he want a divorce? He is world weary, he is exhausted, he's beaten down, but boy, how Sam is, they're the same. They're the same.
It's a great example of Sam being willing to burn down the world to get his brother back. And that scene in the hallway with the knife to Dean's throat, that was, we have to be grateful to all the memes that launched and all the fanfic that particular image launched. Thank you, Jensen, for giving that to us, because it was just.
Yep. Well, I'm going to pick a lighter one and go with fan fiction because it's one of my all-time favorites. This is the musical episode. It was the 200th episode. It's the episode where they happen upon a high school production of the Supernatural books with a little directorial permutations, like the robot in the second scene, which we never really get to see, and the tentacles.
And the tentacles.
Always with the tentacles. But
everything is better with tentacles.
Everything's better with tentacles.
100%.
Yeah. But one of the things I love about this is that you get to see Sam and Dean as they're watching the production and hearing the wonderful alternative version of Carry On. And you see their faces. And this is like the first time the guys have ever seen themselves reflected in that song or seen the song fitting so closely with their lived experience. And you just see that aha moment on both of their faces. And this is just such a wonderful, nuanced scene that you could skip right by. But when you watch it, but how it lands on both of them, Dean's surprise and Sam's, well, didn't see that. Just their reckoning with it. Such a wonderful, understated, Nothing is said. It's all done with their expressions, and they do it beautifully. I think one of my other favorite things with this, besides the statement that tells us you can't get subtext without sex, which has also launched 1,000 fanfics, is how when they're doing the play and Dean is chasing the actual monster through the back of the stage, and the audience, of course, thinks this is just part of the performance, and Dean's getting thrown through the scenery, and the real monster is there, and it's dangerous, and everybody is just enjoying the performance. And then when the monster finally gets staked and explodes in purple goo all over the audience, it's like a Gallagher moment for anybody who remembers Gallagher, the guy who smashed watermelons with a sledgehammer, always had his audience in ponchos in the first several rows because he smashed watermelons with sledgehammers. And this the audience slammed with purple monster goo. And there's that moment when they sit there like, that was, oh my God, that was art. That was fantastic. They all start clapping. I don't know if that would have been my reaction to being splashed with purple monster goo, but it worked. So I just love fan fiction because as it said, as the monster said, Supernatural has everything. And it does indeed. And that's why we're still talking about it.
Yes.
Lola,
And so like neither Dean nor Sam approve of this production. They don't appreciate Chuck Shirley's books. They don't appreciate how they're portrayed in them. They're not keen on high school students doing a freaking musical about it. But when the director and the star and the writer, the high school student who like is the impetus behind this whole thing is like, well, I guess we can't do it. He's like, no, you go out there and you worked really hard on this and you make this the best darn Supernatural, the musical you ever can. And it's like killing him to do it, but he's giving this pep talk to the cast and to the writer and to the production team. And he's just like, everybody has their joy, and I'm not going to ruin it for these ladies and their musical. And so, and then also I'm going to go kill the bad guys, and so that you guys can have your show. And it's just sort of delightful to watch. Because Sam, I don't think Sam would have given that pep talk. I think that's all Dean. Dean was like, no, go forward and do that musical about our lives that we hate, that is awful, that what.
Well, and the whole, hey, subtext, take a step back.
Right?
I don't know.
And he has a soft spot for kids. He wants
He
kids to
does.
do everything they can. So
Yeah, and be kids.
No,
yeah.
but Sam, when he brought over the hunters from the alternate universe, from Apocalypse World, and Sam becomes a leader of men, I think Sam could have given that pep talk.
I don't think Sam would have given that pep talk to the high school students doing the musical. Sam would have been like, nah.
It's the difference between could and would. He could have, he wouldn't have.
I don't know. He doesn't want to see people fail either. I'd like to think that if Sam was in that position, he too would have not chosen to help them rather than see them give up.
Well, and Sam was the theater kid, so I think this had, I honestly, having seen Oklahoma, having seen it on Broadway at a production that actually fed you chili in the intermission on Broadway.
Nice.
They cooked the chili in one scene and then they fed it to you at intermission. And that's the strangest Broadway show I've ever seen. But, I would put this way up against that, and the chili wasn't even that good. So there you go. Lola, back to you.
okay, so one of the episodes I rewatched today was There's No Place Like Home. This is Dark Charlie, and I just love Charlie. I've been a fan of Felicia Day since she did The Guild, which I think predated her time on Supernatural. And this was her show. She got to portray two different characters, Dark Charlie and Way Too Good Charlie, and both cracked me up. I mean, I love Dark Charlie because you really got to see Felicia Day act. I mean, because her wheelhouse is the cute, bubbly, happy character. but Dark Charlie was not what you think of when you think of Felicia Day. She was very bad. She was almost menacing the way she looked at you. And I'm like, she did good with that. And then the funny moments with good Charlie when she's at the bar and she's like, normally I'd be checking out that bartender's ass, but now I just want to send her to college. I went, oh, and see, I'm more the person I want to send them to college. I'm like, that girl, she could do so much in the world. So I relate to that, and it was
Talk
just
that
such a
stripper
good,
into going back to nursing school.
yeah. And I feel like we had an episode early on where Sam said something like that with a stripper. I feel like
Mhm.
that, but I thought
Yeah.
so. So it was like a little callback, probably unintentional, but a little callback to that. And I just loved it. It was really good. And we got to meet and the older version who's on our Earth actually seemed like what I remember like from the movie him looking like. I was like, yeah, he looks like the Wizard of Oz, except for he's younger. The actual Oz version is younger, but yeah, we got to meet that, and it was just a really good episode, and it was a nice setup for an eventual fall that we all know is coming.
Okay. Anna.
Okay, I'm going to skip that episode and I'm going to go to the episode after that, The Prisoner. So Dean goes on the warpath and kills the entire Stein family. So it's the continuation of the previous episode, which I'm not going to talk about because of the way that it ended, although it's a must-watch episode and somebody else is surely going to talk about it. And he's taken to this basement and he's tied to the operating table where the Stein family are like harvesting body parts and like transplanting body parts from this person to that person. And all of them have like different pieces of different people in them. And when he regains consciousness, he tells them that he can't die because of the mark, but this doesn't stop them. And then he breaks free. And then he kills everybody in sight. And it's just sort of like Dean with the mark of Cain. I mean, this whole season has been about how this is bad. This is bad, right? This is bad that Dean kills everybody, that the mark of Cain makes Dean kill everybody. But on the other hand, occasionally when you see Dean like just sort of laying waste to his surroundings, it's a little bit odd. So
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it's an important episode for that reason, but also it's yeah. And then like there's like 3 members of the Stein family that have managed to get into the bunker, even though the bunker is supposed to be impenetrable. And the lore about the bunker being impenetrable and not impenetrable is really a little bit sketchy, but whatever. So anyway, so they're like making a pile of books and they're about to burn them and they're going to burn Dean's things and whatever. And Dean shoots one of them, turns the gun on the youngest one who pleads for his life. And he's trying to prove that he's nothing like his family. And Dean hesitates. And you think that he's coming back from it because he's come back from all of these other times this whole season from, like going too far that the mark is making him do. But no, he pulls the trigger and he kills Cyrus Stein anyway. And then Castiel comes and he's trying to stop Dean from leaving, and he and Sam are trying to cure them and blah, 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 blah. And Dean pulls the angel blade from Castiel's coat and is about to stab Castiel with it. Castiel looks up and pleads with him. And then Dean looks down at him and then stabs a book next to him and walks out of the room and says, "Next time, I won't miss."
Yeah. I would have, the Steins were intriguing. And I think as a monster family, they could have, I felt like all that backstory was sort of wasted by not seeing them for at least a few episodes longer, because they could have been, some interesting things could have come of that, although they definitely got what was coming to them. So that was probably my only complaint about that episode. I'm still on the fence about Cyrus, but was that they could have been monsters a little bit longer.
I mean, we had them for like 3 episodes, which I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like they could have been monsters for a little bit longer, but on the other hand, they were in 3 episodes, which is kind of a lot for for like monsters of the week, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and you
so
know what,
it
Gail?
felt like not enough time, but it kind of was.
I think they could have been developed better because Gail, last night we watched the monster one, where it was
Monster
like
movie.
Frankenstein and stuff, and it was really creepy the way they did it in black and white. It was very haunting, and I'm like, that's how they should have done the Stein family. If they wanted to do it in style, they would have made it like a monster movie and made them a lot creepier because they weren't really that creepy.
Yeah. Sure thing. Elektra.
Well, I'm gonna do the bad one. Dark Dynasty, because it's a really important piece of the season where Charlie and Rowena are together trying to decode the Book of the Damned, and Charlie just can't deal with Rowena anymore and walks out to a less safe place to deal with things, and the Steins catch up with her. And we lose Charlie, who is one of my absolute favorite characters in this whole thing. But, you know, it also figures in that Crowley gets involved with figuring out that Rowena is not where he thinks she is. And the Steins are just so damn evil. They made them a little too arrogant and a little too one note.
Yeah.
They could have been, you know, the head of the household was a little bit too, you will do what I say, you will do it when I say it, and didn't give anybody else agency. And he just was too dumb to live.
Yeah.
So that made them very one note for me, because I too would have liked to see them around more and developed into actual good villains, or smart enough to give the boys a run for their money, as opposed to, I've got the mark of Cain, I'm going to kill you all and nothing you can do will stop me. And then he just breaks free and kills them all like it wasn't anything.
That's
But
a little bit of a letdown.
Dark Dynasty is a really distressing episode, but it could have happened without killing off Charlie, damn it.
Right.
It could have, and it also, we could have
She could have-
manipulated things to get to the end of to accomplish the goal without killing Charlie, and also without her having to make a series of really dumb choices when Charlie isn't dumb.
No.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's also like the hilarious scene between Charlie and Rowena where Rowena is like listing all the things that they have in common. They both have difficult and lonely childhoods. They both had absent parents. They look to themselves for direction. They're outside the mainstream, and they're both sexually progressive.
Mm-hmm.
They're both.
I wanted more time with them together.
I mean, you know.
And we've seen Charlie be a hunter. We know that she's hunting. And so it's not like she's ignorant of the risks. And yet she just blithely, you know, saunters out of their safe space into a freaking hotel, motel room.
Well,
In
this
her
is the person
defense,
who
she
hid
did.
from Dick Roman, and she goes and sits in front of a window.
Well, she didn't realize that the book had a GPS in it.
But
Her
why
defense.
didn't she?
I mean,
How
that
could
was
she
a little
not?
weird.
Yeah. Melissa.
Well, like everybody's taken all of the things I wanted to talk about. So go with Executioner Song. Dean kills Kane after Kane goes on a killing spree, and Dean is like reluctant to do it because he's afraid that that's going to be the thing that pushes him over the edge and he won't be able to control the mark anymore. And he actually does manage to control himself after he kills Kane. And so it was the fight was beautiful. So it's a nice way to take Kane off the board, because we had to get Kane off the board to like advance the plot. So it was that was a nice one. And my other mention, I can't remember which episode it was, but we get a snippet of Benny in one of the episodes in this season, and I'm always here for Benny.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to mention that, Anna, because you were on the panel.
Yeah.
You
I'm
and
always
me,
here for Benny too.
You and me, we get the Benny.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm in that club too.
Okay. Carol.
Gosh, I'm torn. There's two episodes I really want to talk about, but I'm going to go with 10/12, About a Boy. We get the eternal gift of the de-aged Dean. And talk about launching 1,000 fanfics. First of all, because nobody had been thinking of doing that at all. Like, it just had not been conceived of. But once that trope was on the board, people ran with it and, used it in all kinds of different ways and stuff. But this is the episode that started that all. And great performance by the actor who portrays young Dean. He is so Dean-like. He really, he had studied Dean, he had watched the episodes, and he just, the delivery, the mannerisms, the snark. He and Sam, and they're bantering about, Sam's too big to go in. And, Dean goes to drive and Sam's knees are in his throat because he has to move the seat up.
Dean likes Taylor Swift.
It's just, the whole episode is just hilarious about all of that. And then the whole, the monster of the week to me was really kind of ho-hum. But what was great was we had this, one-shot character of the woman that Dean had been having drinks with, who had almost the same neglected, transient childhood that they did. I mean, they're comparing how many ways can you make macaroni and cheese, on the single burner and stuff. And so that gave us a real little unexpected glimpse into their lives, just kind of out of the blue, that was really evocative. And then when it comes down to it, he has to age again, even though he really doesn't want to, because, hey, no Mark. But he ages again because he's got to save people. That's what he does. And she stays young, and he's apologizing, and she's like, hey, I didn't do so well first time around, so maybe this time things can be better, so in a way he did end up saving her too. And so that was a really thought-provoking little side aspect of this, where the monster of the week, they don't want to get eaten, blah blah blah, but here's this young woman who gets her life back and gets a do-over, and is determined to do well with it. And I really loved that. So we have that very, I don't even want to say moving, because it wasn't like, it wasn't like after school special or something where you're like, oh, the more you know, and things will be better. Hallmark movie. It was really tender. It was very tender. And yet we also had the great humor and banter, and Dean dealing with all of these,
it's up, it's down, it's up for no reason.
It's up, it's down. It's like,
and
I have no
your
control.
son is so polite.
Yeah.
Your son is so polite.
I think you broke Melissa.
The everlasting gift afterward is the fact that people had so much fun now playing with that trope of de-aging and stuff. So yeah.
And Sam is so freaked out. Like he's like, my big brother is a teenager. He's smaller than me. He's like, he just has no words for it. He's so freaked out by it, and it's hilarious to watch. And Dean's just like, yeah, no, this is really freaky, dude. Like, this is really freaky. On the other hand, virgin liver, upside, whereas Sam can't see any upside at all. He's just like, no, man, no. He's just like, I don't know what to do.
Well, maybe he just thought it wasn't fair because, when it happened to Sam, he couldn't eat gluten.
That's true.
But he wasn't de-aged. He was in somebody else's body.
Well, but he was still a teenager. But he was a clumsy teenager.
Dean is still him. He just is,
Well, I'm going to go
he
with
had no desire to stay in that body.
No. I'm going to go with Ask Jeeves. I thought this was hysterical. It was kind of a Clue sort of episode. Turns out Bobby left them an inheritance, and Bobby was left an inheritance in an heiress's will. Bobby's gone, so they show up to claim it. And you have the whole juxtaposition between the boys being who they are in this super fancy ritzy house and these super fancy ritzy people who aren't very nice at all. And you've got the butler, and Sam, of course, encounters a couple more cougars, and he's just cougar bait. And so that's always amusing. And then finding out what really happened and what the family dynamics in this super wealthy family is. They've got everything. Here are the boys who've been living out of a car and who grew up the way they did. Here's this family that had every advantage, all the money, big house, all this other stuff, and they're totally screwed up. And so once again, Sam and Dean have more going for them than these folks who have all the advantages, but it ends up being a angry ghost and they deal with it. But I just love the whole Clue clueness of it.
Yeah.
If you remember Clue the movie, and of course based on the board game, it was just so much fun to see that play out in this.
And it's got so many other references too, right? Like it's sort of built around Clue, and it's got like all those Clue references, and it's got references to Agatha Christie, to Murder She Wrote. I mean, honestly, there's some Flowers in the Attic references in this episode too. Like it's just like chock full. Like I'm not sure that I would say that it's like like if you skip this episode in season 10, like whatever, right? You're not going to miss plot things, but it's much must watch because it's just so delightful. So
it isn't a key one to move the arc forward or the plot, but on sheer enjoyment, yes.
100%. Yeah, love this
folks, we have
episode.
time for one more lightning round, so you got to keep it quick. But if there's anything that you want to mention, Carol's getting ready for the sprint. If there's anything that you wanted to mention we haven't gotten to yet, just make it quick. And we're going to start with Lola.
Episode 7, Girls, Girls, Girls. We get to learn a lot about Rowena. And, when we first see her, she's like busting these girls out of a brothel. And I'm like, oh, she's a feminist. How nice. And then she kills at least one of the girls. And I'm like, okay, I guess she's not a feminist. Okay. So we learned a lot about Rowena.
Okay. Anna.
Book of the Damned, so that we learn about the Book of the Damned and how it's a book that is filled with curses and how to break curses, and the Mark of Cain is the original curse and could maybe be broken by it. And the beginning, this is the first episode with the Steins. So sorry, Melissa.
I said it's full of damnation.
Melissa.
I'm gonna pass my time.
Okay. Elektra.
The things they carried. This is the Cole episode, and Cole is pretty much a throwaway, but we do get the con worm in this episode, and that turns out to be pretty important later. So at least it's important just for that aspect of it. And there's a little bit of soul searching and some interesting stuff in there, but really it's pretty much a throwaway except for the worm. So
it's all about the worm.
It's all about the worm.
Why, yes, it is.
A bottle or a
Carol.
I'm going with the Werther Project. Oh, I love that episode. It is dark. It's dark from the get-go when we see this great suburban family one by one off themselves, except for the one young woman who becomes a much older woman. It's all about the men of letters, especially that one creepy guy whose name I can never remember. Is that Cuthbert?
Cuthbert Sinclair.
Cuthbert Sinclair has this box that is supposed to have something that will help with the Mark of Cain, and so they want to get in it. But it's like horribly creates these hallucinations, and what we don't realize is that Sam, in fact, is prey to these hallucinations because he's bleeding himself dry to save Dean. And
Yes.
Rowena is there and he's having these conversations with her. And then we realize when she disappears into a wisp of smoke, she wasn't there. So there's just all kinds of good, dark, creepy, and of course, Sam sacrificing himself for Dean, and which that never gets old. Really a moody piece, and just really, really nice.
Well, you took Werther Project, so I'm going to say Paint It Black.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the one I want to say? Yes, Paint It Black. So this is the one where you've got a ghost who is haunting a portrait because some of her blood splashed on the portrait. You've got a killer priest. You've got supernatural. And a possessed
An
nun.
unchaste nun.
Yes, an unchaste nun. And meanwhile, you've got Crowley and Rowena scheming against each other, and Rowena turns Olivet into a hamster. And then later on, we see Crowley with the hamster cage in hell. So he's got
Just another Tuesday, you say.
right. He's got the hamster cage, and I just thought, what a way to get rid of your powerful witchy rival. She is now a hamster.
In
you know,
hell.
in hell. Yeah. So I'm going to end us with the hamster in hell. Well, folks, this has been wonderful. Let's go around real quick and say where we can find you online, and starting with Lola.
You can find me anywhere. You Google my name, you're gonna find me and a bunch of dead old ladies, and I maybe knew one of them. I don't know.
Anna?
You can, you can find me at annakensing.com and various permutations of that on social media.
Melissa?
You can find Melissa on continual panels and in the TFWNC group. You can find her on Twitter as Tin Hat Daydreams. Mind the profile.
Very good. Thank you, Carol, for stepping in on that. Elektra.
You can find me at untilmidnight.com. Find me on Mastodon at Elektra@wandering.shop. And I've got a new story out at the Zombies Need Brains Patreon, and it will be out later this year at ZNB Presents Magazine Year 2.
Very good. Carol.
I also can be found in the TFWNC group on Facebook and on many continual panels. As Ellis Colton, my debut novella, Prescription for Love, is available on Amazon, and all my social media links for Ellis Colton can be found on elliscolton.carrd.co.
Okay. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell them right, you'll find me on almost all of the social medias under one or both of those names. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I'm a columnist for the Winchester Family Business, but most of the time I'm here on Continual. So thank you for being absolutely wonderful panelists, as always. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural on Continual, so we'll see you online.